Hey, she's recording us.
This is Brenton. Why are we getting recorded?
He is.
Oh.
Something a lawnmower.
Yeah, but it's only
Like, I don't even think we're actually caught soccer field.
ask her.
So she's doing it here, and she like is here to like also like grade it and give like perspective, but also she's not professional.
How is that ring?
So she knows what she's supposed to do, but the only one who actually like hey, go down is be ready for Mr. Young's lesson. Isaac, close that Chromebook. There was a possible twist. That is the last time I tell you, and then I'm going to write one. It is April, and you know my rule. Connor. Sorry. Yeah, there should be one. I'll take it. Anybody seen Sebastian today? He was. Okay.
I'm pretty positive.
Anybody seen Lou?
No, he's not here today.
And if she asks.
Alright, hello everybody. So I am Miss Young. You've probably seen me around the classroom. I am a student teacher. And today I'm actually going to be teaching your lesson. Some of you notice that there is a camera in the back. That is because my lesson needs to be recorded. It's only going to be shown to 2 of my teachers, so you don't need to worry about it. Alright? So I'm going to pass out some lesson handouts that you're going to fill out as I present the lesson. And eventually these are going to be glued into your notebook. You're about to, with Miss Princeton, read a story called The Watsons Go to Birmingham. And as you are reading that book, one of the things that you're going to need to do is write a summary. So today you're going to be learning how to do that. Alright? Who has heard of a summary before? Alright. Can somebody tell me why a summary might be useful? Yeah? Sorry, can you say that again? Right, a summary can briefly let a reader know if they might be interested in a story. How else might a summary be useful? Maybe you want to quickly tell somebody about a story so that you can get across the main ideas. Alright. Pretty soon all of you are going to have your handouts. I want you to write the name on the top. We're not going to be gluing it in the notebook today. You're going to be doing that probably tomorrow. Alright. And like I said before, you want to fill in the vocabulary as we go through the lesson. Alright? So at the top of the handout, you're going to see 2 I can statements. By the end of this lesson, you're going to be able to identify the most important elements of the story and write a summary of a short story. Alright? Yep, you ready? Alright, so first, what is a summary? A summary is very similar to something else called a retelling, but it's slightly different. When you retell a story, you try to include every single detail you can. But when you summarize, you include only the most important details to get to the heart water is like a retelling. It includes every single detail that can possibly fit. But if you wring out that sponge, nice and hard, you're going to get a lot of that water out. A little bit of water is still going to be in there. That's the water that has to stay in there. That's like a summary. It includes only the water or the details that have to be there. All right? So, obviously the next question is, what are some of the most important elements of a story? You're going to want to include the main characters and the setting to begin with, all right? So when you're talking about the main characters, you want to answer questions like, who is the story about? What are these characters like? And what do they want? You'll see that you have those questions on your worksheet so that as you're writing your summary, you can look back to them, all right? And when you're talking about the setting, you're answering the question, where does the story take place, all right? You also want to include elements of plot structure. Mrs. Brinson said that this is something we've talked a little bit about before. You want to talk about the conflict, the climax, and the resolution. Who can tell me what a conflict is? Yeah? The problem. It is the main problem that the character faces in the story. You're answering the question, what is the main challenge that the character faces? Who can tell me what a climax is?
Come on, guys, you know this.
Yeah.
Turning point in the story.
Right, the turning point of the story. And it's the turning point because it's where all the plot points come together and the main character finally faces the challenge in the book, the conflict in the book, right? And who can tell me what the resolution is? Yeah?
Like the effect on the main character after the climax.
Exactly. You want to answer the question, how does life change for the characters as a result of the climax? Yeah?
If there are multiple conflicts, do we include all of them in our summary?
You want to include only the very most important ones. There will usually be one main conflict. All right? Oh.
My fault, hang on.
All right, so we're going to see an example of a summary in just a moment. While she's loading that back up, know that I'm telling you all of this today because we're going to be writing a summary of this story. It's called Suki's Kimono, okay? Has anyone heard of a kimono before? Yeah? Can you tell me what it is?
I can't explain.
All right, can anyone explain what a kimono is? All right.
Stargirl wore one, do you remember? Stargirl?
Yeah.
Isn't it like a religious kind of robe dress thing?
Well, it is very fancy, but it's not quite religious. It is a formal robe or dress that is traditionally worn in Japan, all right? So now that this is back up, the last thing that you need to include in your summary is the theme. Who remembers what a theme is? Yeah?
The big idea of the story.
Right, the big idea. How did you figure that one out? This is what your character learns as a result of overcoming the conflict, all right? All right, so here is an example of a summary of a story that I think all of you probably know, Little Red Riding Hood, all right? Little Red Riding Hood is a little girl who always wears a red hood. While walking through the forest to visit her grandmother, she meets a wolf. Even though she was instructed to stay on the path, he tricks her into getting distracted. By the time she reaches her grandmother's house, the wolf has eaten her, and then he eats Little Red Riding Hood. They are saved when a passing woodcutter kills the wolf and lets them free, showing that children should listen to instructions to avoid danger. Now, in this summary, you may notice that a lot of the details that you traditionally hear in Little Red Riding Hood are missing. And that is because those are not the essential details of the story. So, one too far. There we go. Okay. Those are the kind of details that you have in a retelling. Now let's look at the summary and figure out where the 6 essential elements are. she needs the wool? Cameron? Yeah, main character. All right. Who can tell me about the yellow? Yeah. Right. It's the setting of the story. What about the green? Even though she was instructed to stay on the path, he, the wolf, tricks her into getting distracted. Yeah. Right. This is the main conflict of the story. Who can tell me about the blue? By the time she reaches her grandmother's house, the wolf has eaten her, and then he eats Little Red Riding Hood. Yeah?
Climax.
Right, that is the climax. All of the story points come together, and she faces the result of the conflict. What about the purple? They are saved when a passing woodcutter kills the wolf and lets them free. Right, it's the resolution. It is what happens after the climax. And what about the, well, let's get more pink on the screen. Showing that children should listen to the instructions to avoid danger. Yeah? Right, that is the theme. That is the lesson that can be learned from the story. All right, now we're going to watch Suki's kimono. And if you flip over
Suki's Kimono by
fill
Thierry.
in the details as you see them, all right? There's a chart on the back. Oh, sorry, that's the other one. Look at that. All right, I'm going to pass these out, and then you can take notes.
You want me to go next part?
Yeah, okay.
Uegaki. On the first day of school, Suki wanted to wear her kimono. Her sisters did not approve. "You can't wear that," said Mary. "People will think you're weird." "You can't wear that," said Yumi. "Everyone will laugh and no one will play with you. You need something new, Suki. You need something cool." But Suki shook her head. She didn't care for new. She didn't care for cool. She wanted to wear her favorite thing. And her favorite thing was her kimono. Suki's Obashan had given her the kimono. The first time Suki wore it, her Obashan took her to a street festival where they slurped bowls of slippery cold somen noodles and shared a cone of crunchy shaved ice topped with a sweet red bean sauce. Under strings of paper lanterns, Suki joined her Obashan in a circle dance. She followed her and copied her movements, trying to be as light and as graceful. She watched the other women and children who danced, especially those who were dressed in cotton kimonos like her. Later, Suki sat so close to the stage that when the taiko drummers performed, boom, 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 she felt like she'd swallowed a ball of thunder and her whole insides quaked and quivered. Before they left the festival, Suki and her Obashan stopped at a souvenir stand. There were many things to choose from, but her Obashan found the prettiest thing of all. A handkerchief of pale pink linen decorated with tiny maple leaves and cherry blossoms. When she gave it to Suki, she said, "This will help you remember our..." Now it was time for school. Mother checked Suki's obi one last time and took a picture of Mary, Yumi, and Suki together by the front steps. Then, as she watched, the three sisters made their block to their school. Mary and Yumi stayed several paces ahead of Suki and pretended they didn't know her. But Suki didn't mind. She turned and waved to her mother before she clip-clopped along in her shiny red getup, feeling very pleased in her fan-patterned blue kimono. Once in a while, Suki would lift her arms and let the butterfly sleeves flutter in the breeze. It made her feel like she'd grown her own set of wings. When they reached the school, Mary and Yumi hurried across the yard to a group of their friends. Suki stopped and looked around. Some of the children turned and stared at her, and others giggled and pointed at her kimono. But Suki ignored them. She took a seat on a swing to wait for the bell. A girl dressed in overalls just like a pair Suki had at home sat on the swing beside her. "Hi, Suki," said the girl. "Hi, Penny," said Suki. "How come you're dressed so funny?" Penny asked. "Where'd you get those shoes?" Suki lifted her feet off the sand and wiggled her toes. "I'm not dressed funny," she said. "My grandma gave me these shoes." Suki started pumping her legs. After a moment, Penny did the same, and soon they were both swinging as fast and as high as they could. Swoosh, swoosh, up and up. When the bell rang, Suki and Penny jumped off their swings and ran to the gym for the first day assembly. Once they were finally taken to their new classroom, Suki chose a desk near the window. Penny chose a desk next to Suki. As they waited for everyone to find a seat, two boys in front of Suki turned and snickered behind their hands. One of the boys reached over and snatched at Suki's sleeve. "Look at this," he said. "She's a bat." Suki felt her cheeks burn, but she did not respond. Instead, she concentrated on sitting up straight and tall the way her obashan always did. It was easy to do with an obi wrapped snug around her middle. Her obi was golden yellow, and in its folds Suki had tucked away her pale pink handkerchief. "Welcome to the first grade," said the teacher. "My name is Mrs. Paggio," she smiled. "Let's introduce ourselves and tell everyone what we did this summer." When it was her turn to speak, Suki stood up and told the teacher her name. "Hello, Suki," said Mrs. Paggio. "What did you do this summer?" "My grandma visited us," she said, straightening her sleeves. "She brought me my kimono and my geita." Suki raised her foot to show the teacher her wooden clog. Somewhere in the classroom, someone laughed. But Suki took a deep breath and continued. "The best thing was that she took me to a festival, and there were dancing girls dressed like me, and they danced like this." She took a few steps and swayed her arms sideways. "Look, now she's dancing," someone said, but Suki didn't hear. She hummed the music she remembered hearing at the festival. She remembered how it felt to dance barefoot in the open air on fresh-cut grass that tickled her toes. She tried to picture the other dancers, how they moved forward into the circle with the rhythm of the music, how they stamped their feet first right, then left, swung their arms first up, then down, how they stepped back and back and back, then clapped. When Suki couldn't remember the next step, she made it up, just to keep dancing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, stop. When she finished, the room seemed very quiet. Everyone was watching her. Suki sat down, wondering if she was in trouble. But Mrs. Paggio said, "That was wonderful, Suki," and she started to clap. Then so did Penny, and after a moment, so did the entire class. After school, as the three sisters walked home together, Mary and Yumi grumbled about their first day. "No one even noticed my new sweater," said Mary. "No one even noticed Michael's shoes," said Yumi. But Suki just smiled. As she clip-clopped along behind them, Suki pulled out the pale pink handkerchief from her obi and held it up over her head to catch the wind, and in her blue cotton kimono and in her shiny red geita, Suki danced all the way home.
Alright. So, let's look at the instructions on the front side of summarizing a story. Alright? This is going to be practice for the kind of summarizing that you're going to need to do for the Watsons Go to Birmingham. The first step you need to do is summarize Suki's kimono using at least 5 full sentences. Be sure to include important people and places, the main conflict, the climax, the resolution, and a theme from the story. Alright? So, who can tell me about some of the important people in Suki's kimono? Right, Suki herself. By the way, if you missed anything during the original reading of the story, this would be a good idea to take notes on in that chart on the back. Who else is an important character?
The grandma.
The grandma, right. She uses the word ubachan. That's going to be on the next slide so that you know how to spell it. That is the Japanese word for grandmother. All right. Are there any other important
Suki's
characters?
Kimono
Sorry.
by Chieri Uegaki. Can't wear that.
Penny. Penny is also an important character. Penny is one of the first friends that Suki talks to. Another important character you might want to mention is Mrs. She is Suki's teacher. Alright, what is the main setting of the story? Yeah? Right, it's the school. And what about the main conflict? We haven't heard very much from over here yet. Yeah?
Picking on her.
Well, people pick on her. Why do they pick on her? Because of her kimono. Why would somebody pick on her for wearing a kimono? What do her sisters say is going to happen at the beginning? They say that they're going to laugh at her because they'll think the kimono is weird. Because they don't recognize it. Alright? That's the main conflict. What about the climax? When does the climax happen? Right. Well, that's close. The climax is when she gets called. The students begin laughing at her, and she gets called to the front to explain what she's wearing and how her summer went. And in order to address the conflict, which is the fact that people are making fun of her for wearing something unusual, she tells them about it, and she shows them why it matters to her. That's how she addresses the conflict at the climax. And what you mentioned, the kids clap for her afterwards, that's the resolution. As a result of how she addressed the climax, the kids recognize that this might be unusual, but it's also very cool, right? And who can tell me a theme from the story? There are a couple.
Cause and effect.
Yeah. That's the
Cause and
question.
effect. That's
Right, that is an example of cause and effect. The cause was, she demonstrated what the kimono meant to her, and the effect was the other students appreciated it more, right? Who can tell me about a theme from the story? What is the lesson that a person can learn from this story?
Don't let others dictate what you wear.
Right, don't let others dictate what you wear. Yeah?
Don't be afraid to be yourself.
Don't be afraid to be yourself. These are all really good themes. Alright. For today's assignment, I already read out the instructions. You're going to write the summary first. If you run out of room, there's some extra space in the back that you can use. Okay? After you are done with your summary, number 2, choose a part of the story to illustrate. Include details and use at least 4 colors. This needs to be more detailed than just stick figures, alright? You can choose any part of the story, but you need to include details and at least 4 colors. Where are the colors?
So back there are my colored pencils and my markers. So Ms. Leclerc, you probably want to move.
Alright,
But
so
let's not go get them yet until you're done with your summary.
when you are ready to draw, there are colored pencils and markers back there. You're not going to use pens and you're not going to use highlighters, alright? We're going to use colored pencils and markers. Does anybody have any questions on what we're doing before you begin?
Go sit down, Cameron. Is your summary done?
Alright. So the rest of the class time, you're going to be working on this sheet. It's going to be due at the end of class, okay? We're gonna do this on this color.
How do you spell? Oh, you want to just write them up there? You do not get your magazine project back. There's one with no name. This is Raymond. I'm gonna go make some copies real quick. I'll be right back. I only need to make 10, so I'll be right back.
If anyone is having any trouble spelling some of the more uncommon names and words, here are some of the important ones, all right, if you need help with spelling. What? Well, there's a picture of her on the front cover, if that helps. You see the book up there? So, the main color is blue, and she has a yellow obi, that's the big belt around her. We've got 4 more minutes. If you are 100% complete, we're going to do silent reading, but that's only if you're already done, all right?
That's 4 colors. Good enough.
Make sure that your grammar in your summary is correct. All right? I know you just had a unit on subordinating conjunction. So if you use any, make sure the commas are in the right spot. All right?
This is the shot of a lifetime.
I'll show it to you.
It's because I have to get gas.
Oh yeah? Oh dang. Dang, don't break your own ankles. Shoot it. Shoot it to the
Okay, throw it away, go sit down.
When the bell rings, what you need to do is turn in your summary. You're going to be holding onto the handout. That's going to go in your folder. Eventually, it's going to be glued into your notebook, so hang on to it, okay? And make sure your summary has your name and period. Okay?
Yeah, that's okay. These delay days, they fly by.
Damn, you still got that tan?
Close enough.
Yeah, just do that way.
have your name on the paper, because otherwise I will have no way to know who's or who.
Okay, we still have about 3 minutes. So let's work from
Make
the
sure you have your name on your paper.
There is always
We just watched like in the middle.
Which one this one is? Yeah.
Yours actually looks okay. Yeah, it does.
Sorry,
It's better than mine's. Mine's just an unrated version of yours.
Yeah, finish the summary, hold on.
guys, it's not a stick figure.
Mine isn't.
Mine? It's the one in the stick figure. I think mine is the best of them. I probably got like a 5 out of 40 on that.
Whoa.
That's how it's at.
Whoa. I should
Oh, then I got a 5 out of 10.
Try.
I got a few. It's fine. Unicorn. It was like 10. I'll take it. Do you remember yellow? Bro, yeah. Just a hater. So you're being recorded. You are on snake. You are being recorded, sir. That whole time when you missed, you're doing all that stuff. You're being recorded.
She is not the stick figure.
Oh, wait, you don't like that one? Here, there's a teacher that's gonna sing this. See that? Watch that, man.
Okay, pull my materials back. We will tune in with Tuesday, right? We're gonna bring it back on Tuesday?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Alright. We'll get those plugged in next week. Hey, if you do not have Kobe and Michael done, raise your hand if it's not done. Kobe and Michael. Alright, you three go get your paper, it's homework. Go get them out of your basket. Go get them out of your basket. Kobe and Michael, it's homework. Anybody else over here not have it done? Why did 3 people raise their hand and there's 8 people back there? Yeah, because I would have passed them out had I known it was more than 3. Yeah, good luck finding it.
Why'd you turn your head so fast? You went.
That's better than Karen's.
I'm waiting on you.
Turn into her.
Turn in summary, hang on to handout.
Guys, hurry up! Next time I ask who's not done, raise your hand. I will pass them out.
I know, I said hi in that one.
Have a good day, Miss Bridget.